Each year on the day after Dead Dragon's Day, a handful of algebraists would gather at a secret place. Each year, fewer came than the year before, and each year there would be more than the year that followed. They came to see old friends, came to reminisce. They came to pay their respects to forgotten gods and lost colleagues. They came to remember the before times. On a circle of firewolf pelts, they sat and feasted. Over the years, cheese rounds had become wedges, had become salty bread. And over the years, wine had become mead, had become potions of resist sleep. They would gaze long into the fire and talk and sing their songs. Some clutched an amulet, worn smooth with age, the engraving no longer legible. Most clutched only their fading memories. When the moon was directly overhead, they would toast. To Ronskian, Hermetian, Toplitz, but especially to Vandermonde. The eldest would stand. He would draw a circle in the dirt with his staff. And then, standing in the circle, he would recount the tale. The tale of the Eigenborn. Our story begins long ago and far away, in the land of Yonder Edge. There lived a strapping young barrel maker named Zijago. The name Zijago was known throughout the land for sound construction at a reasonable price, and many were the inhabitants of Yonder Edge who slept soundly, knowing their skeevy pelts and giant fingers were safely kept in a quality Zijago brand barrel product. From lowest curl to noblest kernel, Zijago had a barrel to fit your purpose and your purse. Yes, Zijago barreled well. Coincidentally, he was also a member of the Algebraist Brotherhood, an ancient and mysterious cult schooled in mathematical magics. These days, their kind have all but vanished, lost to the dungeons during the Imperial Paline Holocaust. But in the before times, algebraists dispersed throughout Yonder Edge like the four conjectural winds. There they lived, learned, loved, and quested. Be he secretive as a dugger horde skulking in Barren, one could always recognize an algebraist by the amulet he carried. On the front was engraved a collection of runes called a matrix. A matrix of 9 runes would be organized into 3 rows and 3 columns. A matrix of 16 into 4 rows and 4 columns. A matrix has an equal number of rows and columns, the point being. The matrix each algebraist carried was unique, both in size and in the items it contained. It was assigned to him for life upon joining the Brotherhood. Thus equipped, each new recruit was charged with a quest. Go forth and discover a vector that is left untransmuted by thine matrix, for truly then you are Eigenborn. But just what is a vector, you may be wondering. How does one transmute it with a matrix? And what does it mean to be left untransmuted? Fair questions all. And so we pause here in the telling of our tale to illuminate for you the algebraist's craft. Vectors are enchanted objects which to you or I look to be no more than a list of items. But to the trained ken of an algebraist, vectors portend knowledge of the universe. They are found all over Yonder Edge, weaved into the very rocks. The knowing of a vector was sometimes guarded by a dragon, sometimes by several prerequisite courses and a substantial waitlist. It mattered not. Algebraists traveled far and wide, searching for vectors, albeit carefully skirting the great stinking bogs where evil wizards, versed in the arcane arts of copyright violation, lived. Upon reaching the end depths of some foul tomb or forsaken cave, floor and walls slick with the blood of any who dared block progress, a vector wall was encountered. These were invariably guarded by a creature of extraordinary martial prowess. If victorious in single combat, the algebraist would then approach the wall, and thereupon his sight would go wonky for a time, after which a vector inscribed on the wall would appear in his questing journal so as to now be available for transmutation. And transmute he would. At a shrine of one of the algebraist elder gods, the algebraist would balance a transmutation alembic upon his matrix, then scribe a vector onto a scrap of parchment and place it inside. Sacred words would be intoned, and fire would spring forth to consume the parchment, and the transmuted vector entries would rise in the smoke, as if the very ink had taken flight. The three-vector fubar blech, as spoken in the common tongue, might transmute to splat bang bang, or to bang splat bang, or to shriek fubi exec, or to some other three-vector. But legend spoke of vectors that would emerge from transmutation unchanged, as immune to matrix transmutation, as imperial to reason. The transmutated vector entries might become writ larger or writ smaller, but they would not change, not even in their ordering. Such a vector was called an eigenvector of the matrix. It was believed that at least one eigenvector existed for every matrix. Yet, as we begin the telling of our tale, none had ever been discovered. The search for an eigenvector drove the Brotherhood's frenzied quest, for such a finding would earn one fame and tenure, and of course publication in a playthrough guide. There was but one rule. A matrix would only transmute a vector commensurate to its size. A matrix of 9 entries would transmute only a vector with 3. A matrix of 16 entries only a vector with 4, and so on. Beyond that, understanding of eigenvectors was skimpier than the outfits in a Scarlet Blade armor mod. The great river is mighty, the violet maidens sing, but it starts as sky-tinted water at a place you can cross with but 5 steps. From humble origins come great things is the lesson, a lesson Zajago prayed was true. For although he believed himself Eigenborn, a thought he shared with no man, his beginnings were humble indeed. Alas, the matrix assigned to Zajago comprised but 4 runes, arranged in 2 rows and 2 columns. This pained Zajago to no end, as such a matrix was but 1 step removed from being 1 rune arranged in 1 row and 1 column, which is no matrix at all, but just an ordinary thing. Zajago could not help but envy the impressive amulets of 9 or 16 or 25 runes carried by algebraists of legend. "Disparage not," Strange the Elder said to Zajago one day, upon noting his gloomy countenance. "'Tis not the size of the matrix, but the magnitude of your Frobenius," Master Strange joked, although not really in the ha-ha way. Still, Zajago was loath to expose his amulet in the presence of others. But Zajago took these lemons and made a kick-ass half-cell, as the saying goes. He built his own shrine in a back room of the barrelry, dedicated to Vandermonde the Determined, the algebraist deity whom he took as patron. It was a makeshift affair, comprising a repurposed barrel, upon which Zajago might perch a transmutation alembic, but a serviceable shrine nonetheless. Upon seeing it, Master Strange was taken with Zajago's resourcefulness. "Perhaps one day you will have my job," Master Strange joked, although again, not really in the ha-ha way. Zajago spent many an hour transmuting at his private shrine, evenings and weekends, and on holidays when the barrelry was shut. A continual supply of vectors were provided to him by algebraists passing through town. Zajago's colleagues would never linger, surrendering a page torn from their questing journal, then hurriedly excuse themselves with claims of parchments to be graded or departmental covens to be convoked. It was as if they believed their career progress would be hindered by too intimate an association. For all in the Brotherhood knew of the diminutive matrix Zajago carried. "He'll never get tenure," they would whisper when out of earshot, and sadly shake their heads. And so it was Zajago was alone in his quest, or nearly so. His only regular companion, an Enkidu of sorts to his Gilgamesh, was the town fool Newman. Newman was a shuffler and a mumbler, and wore animals on the ends of his arms. Puppets. One hopes he had taken to skulking outside of the barrelry soon after the shrine to Vandermond was complete. An apt mascot, Zajago thought, and perchance a good luck charm. Zajago gave the fool what coin he could spare, for Newman's begging cup was always at the ready, especially when one of the algebraist brothers would drop by. Not on an academic salary, they would demur and rush past poor Newman, a shameful display that always left Zajago with a heavy heart. Only Master Strange would indulge the fool, making a point to plunk a gold piece into his cup during each visit. Newman would clumsily retrieve the coin with his sausage fingers and test it between his green teeth, then gesture to Strange and mumble an inchoate greeting. Another Dead Dragon's Day had arrived. With barrel making on hold for the festivities, Zajago planned to spend all night at his shrine. His questing journal was full to bursting with an entire semester's collection of vectors. Surely somewhere in these pages was his salvation. Zajago hung a closed sign on the barrelry, returned to his shrine, and got straight to work. He had prepared mightily, with a great well of crown blood, a great stack of parchment, and an even greater stack of cheese rounds. He was assisted in his quest by the shield maiden Blyneath, also known as Matching Set Blyneath. Most would be distracted by Blyneath's charms, but this is not that kind of story. Her job this night was to keep Zajago's flagon topped with dew of the mountain. For a long night it was surely to be. By now, Zajago's vector proofing was efficient and swift. He retrieved a slip of parchment and a quill dipped in crown blood and carefully copied a vector listed in his journal onto the parchment, tongue protruding from the corner of his mouth in careful concentration. Thus prepared, he inserts the parchment into the alembic. Flame erupts, then the result appears in lofting smoke. Imagine now Zajago working into the night, scraps of parchment and cheese, round crusts littering the floor, a flagon of dew of the mountain at table's end. Outside there is the quiet trill of frost crickets and the bubbling of the nearby beck. Inside, the work continues. Zajago writes Ak Pling on a scrap of parchment. Transmuted, the parchment reads Frond Nak. Failure. Zajago strikes the entry from his journal. Again, Zajago writes Bang Bucky on a scrap of parchment. Transmuted, the parchment reads Plick Grok. Failure. Zajago strikes another entry from his journal. Zajago tests the next vector from his journal, then another and another. Hashdak becomes Weenie Banana. Tick Pop becomes Virgula Thrope. Burk Bloogle becomes Pipe Pipe. In Yay Cat becomes Wham Orc. Finally, in a fit of frustration, he slams his meaty fists on the altar. Great herders of the nerfs, Zajago exclaims. Is there no end to this cursed curse. Blyneath appears behind Zajago, rubs his shoulders. Quandoque bonus dormitat vandamondus, she whispers. Come to bed, my love. I am not tired. Then perhaps I can tempt you with some skeevy pie. Not now, woman, Zajago grumbles. I have no time for mammals. The inviting lady, fatigued by all his brooding, slips away. Resolute intonation and occasional cursing continue. The threatening dawn brings Zajago to the last page in his journal. Only one entry remained. It is written, talky bit, and had been discovered in a cave under the Sea of Spirits. Very well, Zajago sighs. Let us end this charade. He glances at Blyneath, asleep in the next room, wrapped in a firewolf pelt. He readies a final scrap of parchment upon which is written, talky bit, and offers it to the Eigen gods. Thereupon, the Eigen gods return. Talky bit. Zajago stared over the edge of his desk in disbelief, like some demented Kilroy. A trick of the candlelight? No, for in repeating the offering, the same result is returned. Great Hessians and Jacobians, he had discovered an eigenvector. Zajago had considered this moment many times in his dreams. There it was accompanied by fanfare, a heavenly choir, the hearty huzzah of dead elders. But here, as the rising sun shrank the night into shadows, there was only silence save for the respire of Blyneath. Zajago possessed a living secret, a glimpse behind the curtain. And now, alas, discovery of discoveries, and no one to share it with. A muffled thunderclap burst off in the distance, or was it maniacal laughter? Zajago moved to wake Blyneath, but she would not be roused. He ran outside and looked to and fro, but lo, the town was also asleep, as the reasonable would be at such hour. It fell then to the unreasonable, to Newman the fool, who happened to be lurking outside at this very moment. Surrendering to this strange irony, Zajago described his extraordinary discovery to the town fool, in a loud voice and with much excited gesturing. Newman almost certainly understood none of it, but that mattered not, for Zajago felt as light as a ravehawk's feather. Having told his discovery to another, he was now certain it had not been a dream. As if by speaking the story aloud, he had proved its verity. Zajago returned to work once more, but briefly. He verified his vector was indeed an eigenvector. The components of the transmuted vector appeared to exhibit a constant scaling of their corresponding original entries. Zajago retrieved his barreling calipers and carefully measured pairs of runes, noting their size before and after transmutation. He was convinced each entry in an eigenvector was resized by the same amount. There was a common magnifying factor. He could go no further. Zajago fell into bed, exhausted, and spooned Blyneath. Soon he was asleep. He knew that when he woke, the world would be forever changed. And so it was, in that hour, and for many hours after that, Zajago and the fool Newman were the only two souls in all of Yonder Edge who knew an eigenvector had been found. Or so Zajago thought. At mid-sun, Zajago was woken by a rude knocking at the back door of the barrelry. He rose alone, for Blyneath had departed early to investigate a rumored dragon sighting by a member of the Duskwatch. Zajago collected himself, padded to the door, and opened it. There stood Strange the Elder. "Master Strange," Zajago dialogued, "this is most unexpected." But Strange was short on pleasantries and pushed his way inside. "Word has reached me of your discovery," he said. "It has? But how?" Suddenly, Zajago understood. "Newman," he muttered, clenching his fist. "Newman indeed," Strange said. Do you think I would leave you to such important work without keeping tabs? But come, tell me the tale entire, for I am wont to hear it. Here Zijago told Strange all that had transpired in prior night. Strange listened intently. When Zijago was done, he spoke. This factor of scaling. Have you invented a proper name for it? Strange circled behind Zijago, but Zijago took no notice. Yes, I have, Zijago answered. I call it an eigenvalue. Eigenvalue, Strange said, slipping a hand beneath his robes. Alas, you should have called it a digenvalue, upon which Master Strange drew a dagger and lunged at Zijago. Their struggle was not as epic as you would hope. For while Strange was treacherous and crafty, he was an academic. His slight torso and little garter-snake arms were no match for Zijago's muscly bulk, built up from his many years of barreling. Zijago ripped the dagger from Strange's hand. "Stop it, you weirdo! What is the meaning of this?" And here it was that the chief of the Algebraist Brotherhood began to weep. His eyes red, his face wet, he spoke in many sentences ending in an exclamation point. "You fool! You have undone us all. For once the secret of the eigenvector is known, there will be no more need of it. School children will learn its making. It will be known to every NPC. The steam elves will build a machine that extracts eigenvectors from a matrix using nothing more than steam and spinning gears and steam. The Brotherhood will be no more." But Zijago calmed the old master. He sat him at the kitchen table and brought him snout loaf and a pot of honey. Zijago then recounted the tale of his boyhood, how his father was a barreler and his father before him. When his grandfather arrived, Zijago explained, folks didn't have barrels. They just put their stuff on the ground and drew a circle around it in the dirt. His grandfather built the first barrel ever, and his father invented the lid. His father also composed the barrel maker's song, and Zijago gave a stirring rendition. The family business thrived, Zijago explained, and the town thrived with it. Tribute was collected by the Nurl, which allowed them to have clean drink water and open a school, and pay tower men to keep watch at the wall. They built the finest wench keep in all the land. Verily, the drink water was kept in barrels. The school required barrels. The watchman required barrels. More came to live in the village each year, all of whom in need of barreling. The public coffers swelled, and more and greater public works were proffered. The High Hogborn demanded the Nurl stop collecting tribute, arguing that it would cause the town to grow more quickly. But the High Hogborn were smoted with cudgels, and their broken bodies given to the ground. Yunderedge folk may believe in ancient prophecies and talking dragons, Zijago explained, but even we aren't gullible enough to fall for a Laffer curve. It was here that Master Strange glanced at the clock. "You want to try landing this thing, son?" he said. "My point is that the Brotherhood will never be obsolete." Zijago made the universal gesture for barrel. Knowledge is like a barrel. The more you put in them, the more barrels you need. "That's the dumbest analogy I've ever heard," Strange quipped. "Hey, I didn't see you discover an eigenvector," Zijago noted. "Fair point," Strange said. With that, the old master pushed his empty plate aside and stood to take his leave. Here I will tell you a little of the future. Zijago became a tenured member of the Algebraist Brotherhood. He moved to Snowfall College with Blyanth, where her speech tree perks helped him negotiate a 2-2 with the department. There, further research built upon his fateful breakthrough. They discovered that a matrix sometimes has more than one eigenvalue, and more than one eigenvector, and sometimes not. They discovered that many a matrix has as many eigenvalues as the size of the matrix. They discovered that by arranging the eigenvectors themselves in a matrix and applying this matrix twicely to the original matrix, it became transmuted to a diagonal matrix, and many things besides. But those are stories for another time. And so the two men toasted to Ronskian, to Hermetian, to Toplitz, but especially to Vandermond, the determined, and to the barrel maker's transformation. Zajago slapped Master Strange heartily between the shoulder blades. Now come, let us away to the wench keep. Verily, they have an early bird special.